In the next section, we're going to talk about how to clear decimals. So to clear decimals in an equation, we're going to multiply every term on both sides of an equation by a multiple of 10. So what I mean by that is if I had an equation like 2x minus 0.2 equals 0.7. So notice I have 2x, 2/10, and 7/10. That is how that is read. So to get rid of these tenths, we're going to multiply every single term by a 10 because it's tenths. So 10 times 2x is going to be 20x. 10 times 0.2 is minus 2. And 10 times 7, sorry about that, 10 times 7 is going to be 7. So now this doesn't have any decimals in it, so we're going to add 2 to both sides. We're going to have 20x equals 9, and then we're going to divide by 20. Now, because we started with decimals, we're going to try our best to end with decimals. Now, the exception to this is if it's not exact. But when we divide 9 by 20, we get 0.45, which is an exact number, which means we can leave it as the 0.45. Okay, so if we start with decimals, we try to end with decimals, just like if we start with fractions, we try to end with fractions. So let's look at number 7. We're going to have 0.21x minus 3.7 equals 1.4. Now when we look here, this time we have a hundredths, 21 hundredths, 3.7 tenths, those are 7 tenths, and then 1 and 4 tenths. So if we multiply by 10, we're still going to have a decimal on this first thing here. So what we need to do is we need to multiply that by the biggest factor of 10, the biggest multiple of 10. So in this case, it's going to be 100. So we're going to take and multiply every single term by 100. So when I do that, that moves this decimal over 2 places. So now this is 21x. Minus, it's going to move this one over 2 places. So 370. And that's going to equal, if we move this one over 2 places, that's 140. So now we're going to add 370 to both sides. So 21x equals, this is 0. That's going to be 510. And then we're going to divide by 21. So x equals, now if we take 510 and divide it by 21, we get this really long decimal that's not exact. So if you check it right now in your calculator, it's 24.28 something something something. And that's not exact. So in this case, we would actually leave this as a reduced fraction. So 510 over 21 reduces to 170 over 7. Now, if the direction said give a rounded decimal if necessary, in this case we would say the rounded decimal is about 24.29. But the only time you do this is if the directions say, which means you have to read the directions. Otherwise, you should always give me the exact answer, which in this case would have to be a fraction. All right, so looking at now number 8. So we're going to have 1.212 minus x equals 3.2. So what do you think we would multiply this by? Well, if you said 1,000, you would be correct because we have 212 thousandths. So we would multiply everything by 1,000. So when we do that, we would have 1212. This would move the decimal over 3 places. So 1,000 times x is just minus 1,000x. And 1,000 times 3.2 is going to move the decimal over 3 places. So 3200, 3,200. Now we're going to subtract 1,212 from both sides. So this becomes 0. So we have 1,000x. When we subtract that, we get 1988. So now we're going to divide both sides by negative 1,000. Now anytime we're dividing by a multiple of 10, this is kind of nice. all we have to do is remember to move the decimal to the left side. So x is going to equal a negative 1.988. And because this decimal is exact, this is the answer I would want.